What's up, you beautiful chuds? And guess what? Art the Clown is back. Art the Clown is back doing the things that Art the Clown does best. That's right, Terrifier 3 is out now at the cinema. So irrelevant of what I say on this, as I always say, if you're watching this, whatever you take away from it, go and watch this at the cinema. Now, I've literally been back 20 minutes or so. I have got back. I've been thinking about this movie. The second it finished, the second I left the screen, I got home. I've even written down notes for this. So what I will say to you straight away is, as usual, there are going to be spoilers. Because when I do the reviews, they aren't just normal little reviews. If you want to see a little review about Terrifier 3, then there's probably a million of them already on YouTube. Just go and find and watch one of those. But if you want to watch what is probably one of the most in-depth and most honest reviews out there so far of this movie, then keep watching, because I'm going to get into as much as I can and give you my very, very honest and very fresh opinion on what I think about Terrifier 3. So as I've said, there are going to be spoilers because I want to tell you everything that I think about this movie. And the best way for me to do that is the way that I end up sort of structuring a lot of my reviews. And how I do that is I go through the pros, I go through the cons, and sort of give you an overall thoughts of what I think about the movie. So strap in, because it's going to get very honest and it's going to get... I don't know, I'm going to have fun with this one, and, you know, just keep watching. Unless you haven't seen Terrifier yet, then go and watch it first, and then maybe come back to this. But let's get into the pros. So one of the things that I did say to myself when I was doing this review is that I honestly am going to try and do everything I can to stay away of how I feel about Terrifier 1 and Terrifier 2 when thinking about this movie and Terrifier, 3, and for what it is on its own. But also at the same time, it's going to be very difficult to do that. So you will have to deal with it. Simple as that. So starting off with some of the pros is that I believe that this is the best looking Terrifier movie that there has been. So Terrifier 2, here I go, I'm already talking about one that's not this one, but Terrifier 2 was for me a huge step up aesthetically, cinematography wise. Technically, Terrifier 2 was a huge step up from Terrifier 1. I'm not going to go into my thoughts about them, that's for a later date, but it was a big step up. And when you see the trailers for Terrifier 3 and so on, it definitely gave you this different sort of feel, this different sort of aesthetic, the different sort of tone and colour grading. And it does. Terrifier 3 is, an old school looking grindhouse 70s 80s old school horror, very reminiscent of things like Silent Night, Deadly Night, and of course Black Christmas, which is obviously a huge influence. And you can see that there is a lot of influences from this movie on a technical and an aesthetical and a cinematography level, but it's purposeful. You can tell it really is. And honestly, I think that this is the best looking Terrifier movie. And I do, as I said, I liked how Terrifier 2 looked as a step up from what Terrifier 1 was. And this sort of feels like a happy medium between both of them. So that's a very good pro, because once again, it becomes about this journey that Damien Leone is on as a filmmaker and constantly learning. And that is just one of the standouts from his movies so far that I'm sure I've got here, loads as well. One of the obvious things to talk about is the practical effects. They're just, in Terrifier, they are so fucking gnarly. From even Terrifier 1, obviously that for me, Terrifier 1 showcased for practical effects. That's mostly what that movie was for me. Terrifier 2 was about, expanding the world, the story and everything. And I'm not going to go into it too much. I'm really trying not to, because I want to just talk about Terrifier 3. But this one, in regards to practical effects, it's taking it up a level. What's insane about the practical effects in this movie is that they are so realistic, but it's also feels like you're watching something otherworldly. and it's a weird experience because you are watching things that you've never seen before or thought you'd never see or never want to see, especially when it comes to real life. Like, you don't want this shit to be real. So we go and watch horror movies for that. And this film, once again, excels in that department. And if you're someone that, like me, grew up adoring and being amazed and in awe of practical effects, this movie will give you that. And that is what I love about Damien Leone's approach to these sort of movies. If he can do everything to make it practical, and obviously he does, and obviously it's not a big budget movie, so it has to do what it can practically, and obviously it's not a movie that has a load of CGI and all that sort of stuff and visual effects. So once again, one of the standouts is the fact that we get to see some of the gnarliest things that you'll ever see on screen, and it's absolutely glorious. It truly is. One of the things that sort of stood out for me in this movie is the music. And what I mean by that is that the score is obviously fantastic, and it was in Terrifier 2 as well. But I feel that the music is used in a better way in this movie. I feel like, there's a lot more Christmassy sort of music in this, and we do get what I think I heard was like a Christmas Terrifier song, which is, I'm going to have to look it up to see if it was, but I was like, when I was watching it, I sort of was paying attention to what Art the Clown was doing and where he was going and so on. And at the same time, my ears were sort of listening to these things going, hang on, did that lyric like say what I thought it did? So I think there is like some sort of Terrifier Christmas song in there as well, which, we've got to try and get to number one. But I feel like, once again, there's an evolution to Damien Leone's filmmaking where the music was used better in Terrifier 3 than it has done before, and that is, that's absolutely brilliant. But once I do keep talking about Damien Leone, and I think that this movie is another example of what a exciting force Damien Leone is for the horror genre as an exciting filmmaker. It is always exciting about what comes next. I think that he's constantly getting better at character development. I think there's probably things he might need to work on with the script wise. But what I mean, about character development, is that Terrifier 1, once again, without trying to go too much into, but Terrifier 1, it was very generic. The movie itself was pretty generic, but the characters, they were horror characters, there for one thing. Terrifier 2 felt like a huge step up for that. We were introduced to Sienna, we were introduced to Elliot, we were introduced to the mother, who a lot of people seem to have a lot of problems with the mother, but I didn't. I thought that the way that she was played was very honest and very real. And look, parenthood isn't easy, especially when you're doing it on your own and you've had the troubles of whatever the past was to this mother. I thought that she played that really well. And obviously she, unfortunately met her demise in a gross mashed potato way that you can never look at mashed potato ever again the same way. But his character development from the first one to the second one was monumental. We got, introduced to an incredible final girl, a really sweet brother. And even her friends in Terrifier 2 weren't annoying people that you can't wait to get to that point where they're going to meet their demise in some horrible way at the hands of Art the Clown. You actually sort of felt sorry for him when that happened. And for the most part, Terrifier 3, once again, does that successfully. And I think the main focus on that, of where it, succeeds, is where Sienna's now living with her mother's sister, her aunt and her, sort of uncle, so to speak, and her little cousin. I think it works out to be a cousin. But yeah, and that family dynamic and how they're looking after her, but still trying to look after themselves and make sure that they're safe and their daughter's safe. I really like that, and it's, once again, it's a bit more of a kudos to Damien Leone as a filmmaker in regards to understanding characters and building up that character development. I think he's very good at that, and that, once again, the reason I point that out is because that's difficult to do in horror, or if it's not so difficult to do, it just doesn't happen, because most of the time we get very one-dimensional characters that are there to do that one thing that we know what the movie's about. When you get a Terrifier like Terrifier 2 and Terrifier 3, when they meet their demise, you're actually quite sad about it, and the impact that it has on you, because of the impact that not just that it has on the movie, but you feel like where they're more real is the impact that those deaths have on the other characters who are important people in their lives. You know, the more that it feels real, the more of the impact that it has. And I think Damien Leone is getting so much better at that every time he makes a movie. You know, we're not just watching a bunch of arseholes, although there are a couple people in this movie that are there just for that reason, which, funny enough, one of them's a podcaster. So hopefully people don't think of me that way. And then obviously talking about the characters, one of the things, like I've already mentioned as well, talking about the character development, that doesn't get there just through Damien Leone. That gets there through performances. And the performances in this are absolutely phenomenal. One of the standouts, so obviously I'll get into some of the standouts, but one of the most interesting standouts of this movie is actually Victoria, who gets an elevated role in this movie. And what's interesting is that sometimes you don't want to overpopulate your movies, and sometimes, like when we've got characters like Sienna, when we've got characters obviously like Art the Clown, we think to ourselves, like, do we really need another one to overpopulate these movies? And then it's just another character that might make the movie longer for no reason, or, you know, another character you're like, well, I don't need to be on this person's journey. Well, that's completely wrong with this movie, because Victoria and the way that she's performed and the way that she is, and obviously the integral part that she plays to this overall story arc of what Terrifier is and so on. Obviously she plays such a bigger important part in Terrifier 3, but she's performed brilliantly. It really works. There's so many dark moments that she brings to this movie. And that's one of the big things about this movie, is that it is obviously very, very dark, as well as being, you know, what else it is. But she brings a character that could be a completely nothing character, and could have been a character that we no longer needed into it. She's become an integral part of it, and not at any point do you think to yourself, well, that's a shame that she's in there doing what she's done. Like, there's almost a moment in the last sort of act where Art the Clown, for a moment, is almost like in the background and isn't as an integral character as we know that he is or should be. And you're like, well, I wouldn't see more Art the Clown, but yet you don't feel like that. You're happy sitting there going, oh, Victoria's fucked up, and you want to see more of that. So she's performed brilliantly, and I like that the fact that they brought a different, more important arc to her character. Once again, you know, performance-wise, great, but once again, great character development from Damien Leone. Obviously, you can't talk about a Terrifier movie without Art the Clown, without David Howard Thornton as Art the Clown. And to be honest, I'm not even going to go into it much. This is obviously, for me, this is his best performance as Art the Clown. It is a slightly different performance, I would probably say, because in the first one, sorry, not in the first one, in the second one, so to speak, and I will refer to the second one more because obviously that's the one I prefer more, and that's the one that blew my mind. But in the second one, you feel like you're on a bit more of a journey throughout the film with Art the Clown. Whereas this one, he sort of feels a little bit more like the journey is with Sienna and everything she's going through. Art the Clown is there to pop up and do the nasty things in, you know, Art the Clown ways. And I suppose that can be a bit of a negative, but at the same time, it doesn't matter, because it's the way that David Howard Thornton is playing Art the Clown. And this, to me, is... he's phenomenal in this movie. He truly, truly is. He is not only absolutely terrifying, but he is so funny. And what I love about David Howard Thornton as Art the Clown is that one moment he's got you in stitches because of the things that he's mimicking and miming and everything that he's doing. Because remember, I mean, he's got to do this performance without saying words, and he still manages to get you to feel something. Because sometimes you're feeling, the laughter and the fun side of it, but then he switches it, and he goes from having this sinister look, this fun look on his face, to this incredibly evil, demonic, sinister look on his face. And that's phenomenal, right? I mean, what a phenomenal actor he is to be able to do that. So Art the Clown is an icon already for a reason. It's performed brilliantly. But without going into, once again, too much, because I will go into it a little bit more at the end, Lauren Rivera as Sienna. She was fantastic in the second one. In this one, it just goes to another level of how fucking good she is. She truly is a wonderful, wonderful talent. Jesus Christ, this movie is so good in regards to what they do with Sienna. And it was weird being in that movie and hearing all this stuff about everything else that's going on around the world with this movie, and not at any point did I go into this movie expecting the emotional impact that I was going to get from Sienna. They do a great job with dealing with her, essentially her PTSD and her grief of everything that she's been through previously. And in this film, she's dealing with it, and she's dealing with it in front of us. And it's so well done, and it's so well put together for the movie. But you need somebody who can perform that. And the way that Lauren Rivera performs it is absolutely phenomenal. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. So, there's so much pros to this movie. And then one of the last sort of pros that I want to talk about as well is the last third of the movie, essentially the final fight. As I said, that takes place probably in the last 20-25 minutes of the movie in a family home. Everything that happens in that final third is absolutely mind-blowing. It is just for me, this is everything that I want from a Terrifier movie. Not only do you get an absolutely incredible fight scene between, the final standoff, so to speak, between Sienna and Art the Clown, and we get this incredible fight scene where the sound design is absolutely phenomenal. It looks great. You can feel the hits, the punches, the chainsaw, everything goes through that. But also the scene itself is incredibly dark. It's incredibly violent. It goes to places where you don't expect it, which is what you expect from a Terrifier movie. But even then, it is so unexpected. And also as well, I could be the only one, but there's a moment in it that I could not help but think of the Lemmy Winks song from South Park. So if you've seen this movie and you know what Lemmy Winks is, you know exactly what I mean. And now I've just got the Lemmy Winks theme in my head. But that whole entire last 20-25 minutes is absolutely fucking phenomenal. So yeah. So there's loads of pros to this movie, and I said this was going to be in depth and it was going to be a bit longer because we still got to get to the cons of the movie. Are there bad bits of the movie, or not necessarily bad bits of the movie, but things that I think I didn't like or could be better? Well, of course there is. There's going to be for most movies. So let's get into the cons. So one of the cons of the movie is quite interesting to me because there are certain things that Damien Leone that I've already spoken about, certain things that he does very well. One of the things that I'm not a big fan of that he does is editing. I still feel like the editing side is, and I don't mean this in a patronizing way, I don't even know you know, I can't say much, you know what I mean? But at the same time, I'm not the only one that can see that there may be a possibility that they might need to get a different editor. It's not something that makes you go, fuck, that's bad and all that sort of stuff. But there's a lot of quick cuts, or there's a lot of pointless moments. And also at the same time, you know, these movies are still very long. There's moments in Terrifier 3 that you can easily cut out. Potentially, there's even a couple of deaths that you could cut out of Terrifier 3, but they're essentially there because, you know, that's feeding what people want, so to speak. But it doesn't always need to be that. So yeah, it's interesting that all the good that Damien Leone does and all the learning that you can see in front of your own eyes, one of the things honestly needs to focus more on, I would say, is the editing side of it. But like I said, it's not something where you're like, well, that's so shit, it puts you off the movie. It's just when you're watching it, like Terrifier 1, Terrifier 2 was the same. There was a lot of moments in Terrifier 2 where the editing wasn't great, or this scene should have been where this scene was, and so on. But it's all about learning, and it's all about learning filmmaking, your craft and so on like that. And he's quite clearly getting he's getting so much better every single movie he makes. So like I've already said, the trajectory that he's on is so exciting for horror, but there's always going to be certain things that I'm going to notice, or other people might notice about it. And editing for me is sort of one of them. One of the other sort of cons of the movie is that you think it should be sort of a pro, because in this movie we get some of like sort of horror legends. We get stuff like Jason Patric, we got Clint Howard in it, we get Tom Savini in it as well, and you know, and there's more. But the problem is that they sort of feel like they're thrown in there just for the sake of going, remember these guys, horror legends, we're going to put them in here just for you. And then it's a bit of a shame, because you're like, you don't need it. And even though it's cool seeing them, I just felt that they're sort of shoved in there for the purpose of being there. And that's a bit of a shame, you know. So I feel like they're a little bit wasted. But at the same time, it's still cool seeing them. So it's a pro and a con, I suppose, to be that one. You know, Jason Patric, for example. I mean, I love Jason Patric. You just would have thought that he would have had, bearing in mind that he is an integral part to the story, and maybe that integral part will become bigger, a bit like Victoria from Terrifier 2 to Terrifier 3, maybe Terrifier 4. Jason Patric will be back and have a bigger part in that. I don't know. We won't know. But out of all of them, he's the one that you're like, okay, well, he's very relevant to the story. But he wasn't in it much, or didn't get that many moments to sort of show how good Jason Patric is. But it was still really nice seeing him. One of the other disappointing things, sorry, I was just reading it because I was like, oh shit, I completely forgot about it, and this is why I've written it down. But what's interesting is that obviously we know Sienna is obviously such a huge pivotal character to it all. But one of the other pivotal characters to it all, or especially Terrifier 2, was obviously a brother Elliot, who is almost a side character in this movie. He isn't in this movie whatsoever, anywhere near as much as what I thought he was going to be, because, you know, he's such an integral part to Terrifier 2. You know, he's the sweet brother who's so innocent, you know, who's obviously a little bit troubled, you know, because he's had to deal with what he has had to deal with. You know, Sienna, the mother, everybody's not the only one that's had to deal with, you know, with everything. And he's still part of it. And he sort of feels forgotten in this movie, and that's a little bit shame. He's reverted, so to speak, to being one of the sort of generic horror characters. And the sad thing about this is that, and once again, I'm talking about spoilers, and I'll try not to say too much, but it looks as though that might be it. And that when there is a Terrifier 4, which we know there will be, then there won't be an Elliot. And so I was quite shocked at how sparingly he was used in Terrifier 3. And it was actually quite a shame, because once again, there's a character or a character development, so to speak, in Terrifier 2. You know, we were introduced to him, and he was just such a sweet kid. You don't want anything bad to happen to him. And in this one, in Terrifier 3, he's just not used right, and that's a bit of a shame. And then once again, one of the only other cons, which once again isn't a massive one, because we still enjoy our journey with this movie, is that the fact that this is still a 2-hour movie, and there are moments in it that you're not bored. You're never bored watching this movie. But there are moments in this movie where it borderlines becoming what it shouldn't be, which is putting scenes and moments in it for the sake of doing it, because it's what they think people want. For example, there are some death scenes in this that, as gnarly as they are and as mad and crazy as they are, do we need them? And I would say sometimes no. Unless you're somebody out there that literally goes to watch these movies just for the horrible things that happens. I don't. I go because I want to see more about the world that they're building with Art the Clown, as well as Art the Clown doing these horrible things. And like I said, the world they're building with these characters and so on. So it's an interesting one. It's a bit of a pro and a con that we get to spend more time watching these characters and do their things on the screen for a longer amount of time. But at the same time, there are moments that can easily be cut out to make this 20 minutes shorter. And then the advantage of making it shorter is that it means that you are non-stop on this unpredictable, relentless ride of a movie. And it doesn't then give you a chance to slow down, or the movie doesn't have a chance to slow down, because you are taking out moments that you don't need and then just making it flow quicker. And with a movie like Terrifier, with as crazy, as much of a riot as punk rock as Terrifier is, you sort of want that relentless energy going throughout of it. And sometimes you get the moments that take you out of that, and sometimes it's nice to ease up. But at the same time, it's a horror film. You don't necessarily always need to be 2.5 hours long. So it's nice that this film is shorter, but it still probably could have been cut down a little bit more. But, Terrifier 4, if that's going to be the last one, then it might end up being like 6 hours or so. So there we go. There's some cons as well. Let's get into what I overall think of Terrifier 3. So overall, Terrifier 3 for me has a lot more pros than cons. And that's what you want, right? Whenever I watch a movie, I'm always going to have my gripes, my cons. And to be honest, with a lot of movies I review or watch, there are so many more cons than pros. And it's great when we get a movie like this that is constantly evolving, constantly expanding, not just the story, but the characters and where they go with how gnarly and insane they are. That's exciting. Overall, as I said, this film is absolutely fantastic. It's got absolutely insane kills in it. If you are somebody that is out there that, like I've already said, that loves practical effects, you'll love this. This is expertly crafted. This is A-star, A-plus level practical effects that is worth going to see the movie. If you can stomach it, it's worth going to see the movie just on that alone. You might walk out thinking that you don't like any of the Terrifier movies, but you have to praise Damien Leone and anybody on those movies that work on the practical effects. You can't do anything. You have to praise them for it. And Terrifier 3 is another shining example of how good practical effects are in this movie, but how important practical effects have been in the past and should still continue to be. If a small budget movie like Terrifier 3 can do practical effects on this level, fucking Hollywood big budget movies can fucking make practical effects and leave all this CGI stuff behind. Unless they need to, just fucking make it. If you can, make it. They've done it in Terrifier 3. They've done it in Terrifier 2. They've done it in Terrifier 1 at an expert level. Everyone else can. So this movie has it all. It's absolutely fantastic. Like I've already mentioned, the film absolutely is absolutely gorgeous. I love this Christmas look that they have, but it's not just the fact that they shove Christmas lights up and go, it's a Christmas movie. You've got all these, the color grading, the black Christmas sort of style grindhouse look to this movie really lends itself to Art the Clown as a character, but also all the nasty shit that's going on. This film goes to some very, very dark places. And I haven't really mentioned that too much in this, but that is also, once again, a pro and a con, depending on who you are. But this film is a very dark movie, and this film tonally feels more like the first one, which I thought might happen, and I was very worried about that. But then, because of Art the Clown being who he is, there's the fun moments that bring you out of that, where you are genuinely, or I was genuinely, and I know a lot of people that were watching the film in the same screening as me, we were genuinely laughing out loud. So yes, there are some very, very dark moments in this film, and it goes to places that you either don't want, or it goes to places that you don't expect, and they do some horrible things to kids and so on that you don't want to happen. And it's difficult to say that they do it in a justifiable way when they're still doing these things to kids. But at the same time, this is a horror film. This is a Terrifier movie. They are going to do what they can to break boundaries. They're going to do what they can to make you squirm in your seat. That's the point in these movies, as well as all the other elements of it. So go into this movie, if you haven't seen it, expecting some dark moments, and if you have seen it, well, then you know what I'm talking about, where this film goes to some dark places, not just in the guts, the blood, the gore, but in the other moments as well. It's very, very dark. I mean, even within the story as well, and the way that they're telling it in the movie, it can be really dark as well. And then on top of all of this, we do get the performances as well. And like I said, the heightened role for a character that I've completely bloody forgotten her name for now, but you know who I mean. She, you know, that heightened character, what they do with her, and you think to yourself, we don't need another character like that, but yet in the movie it works so well. David Howard Thornton as Art the Clown is better than ever, which is absolutely insane how good he continues to be at playing this, like I've mentioned already, icon of the genre. But, and this is something for you as well, if anybody's even watching this or got this far, which I truly hope you have, but if you have, one of the things that I really want to do and I really want to champion is getting some form of petition, some form of hashtag out there for Lauren Rivera to be accepted or to be up for any awards, because you can't understate how important she is to this movie on an emotional level, and how much of an emotional impact she is in this movie and what she gives to you. I honestly didn't go in expecting that from this movie. She's that good. And the fact that we know, watching this movie, and if you are a fan like me, a lifelong fan of horror, it's so sad when you watch movies like this that have great performances in it that never get recognised. And of course, they might get recognised in horror awards like the Chainsaw Awards or Dead Meat. But why are they not accepted in all these proper awards when they are so fucking good? And this performance by Lauren Rivera, if she doesn't get nominated for things, it's a fucking travesty. It truly is. And I don't think that you will find anybody out there that watches this movie, whether they like it, whether they don't like it, can come out of this and say that she wasn't one of the big driving forces of how phenomenal of an emotional impact that you have from this movie because of her. That is something really to behold in a horror film. We very rarely get it, and when we do and they don't get recognised for it, it's fucking shit. And I hate it. I mean, you know, everybody knows outside of this, acting, filmmaking is what I've always wanted to do. And if I see a performance that's inspirational, like her performance in Terrifier 3, in a film that doesn't even necessarily always have these great performances, the fact that David Howard Thornton, Lauren Rivera, and everybody that deserves to in these movies don't get recognised for performance is fucking insane to me. So we need to get a hashtag going for Lauren Rivera Oscars, or hashtag Lauren Rivera awards or something, or Sienna Awards or Sienna Oscars. I don't fucking know. Let's figure something out together so we can get it out there, because she truly deserves recognition for her performance in this. She will get it from us, from the horror community, or people who watch this movie and enjoy it. She will get it. But that's not enough. She deserves it. So what a fantastic performance all round from her, but also David Howard Thornton and everybody involved in this movie. And once again, overall, Damien Leone is such an exciting filmmaker for horror. And what is great to see is when you're watching these movies that he's making so far, every single one, you can see that he's learning his art, he's learning his process every single time, and he's getting better and better. And that is an amazing thing for Terrifier, and that is an amazing thing, an exciting thing for horror. So at the moment, doing this review, you know, sitting down in front of you, only just watching it, just got back. Do I think that Terrifier 3 is the best one? The more I think about it, the more I think, you know what, yeah, it is. I think Terrifier 3 is my favourite out of them, because it is truly a great movie. Like, when I came out of this movie, I was absolutely buzzing. Like, when I was a kid and watched Jurassic Park for the first time, you come out and you're like, shit, I've never seen stuff like that before. Terrifier, yeah, sure, I may have seen things like that before, but I came out of it absolutely buzzing and going, wow, like, what great, like, I've gone through this, performances, filmmaking, cinematography, you know, sound design, you know, performances, just everything. And if you get that, that's a rare thing, especially within the horror genre, because there's so much shit. So it's a great movie, but I genuinely do believe that this might be my favourite out of all of them. And I keep thinking about why and so on. And there's a few reasons why, and I've spoken about them as well. You know, Terrifier 2 genuinely blew my mind. But if right now I'm thinking about which one that I want to go back to more often, or which one I will go back to more often, irrelevant of runtime obviously, because Terrifier 2 is 2 hours, like 40 minutes, like it's a long movie, so sometimes that might put you off. But irrelevant of runtime, what movie do I feel like I'm going to go back to more and enjoy right now? That's Terrifier 3. And I know that I won't get another chance to see it at the cinema, but I fucking want to, because I loved it. And I'm so happy that I did, because going into this, I was really nervous, not because of obviously all the shit that everybody's saying about it, because that doesn't bother me. I've seen the sadness, and I would probably say the sadness in regards to what the depiction of the violence and the stuff is in that. You know, that's probably worse. You probably get worse things in this, but that's because of like the way that it looks and so on. So just probably the way that they do the depicting of violence in something like the sadness is worse, because they do some pretty fucked up things. Emotionally scarring things in the sadness, and I don't think Terrifier really feels that much like that. But it's it's just an exciting moment in horror that we have something like Terrifier 3 that I want to watch again, and I want to keep watching it, and I can't wait. And also, obviously, one of the other negatives as well, I completely forgot to say about this, but one of the negatives that has been going around, and I actually do agree with this, but I do think that there's a reason, is that it's weird watching a Christmas movie on Halloween. It's October. It should be all Halloween. But I think that I know the reason why, and that is because if they do this and if they rush this, it's going to be a double whammy, and it's going to be a win for, on a monetary and on a business perspective, it can be really smart, because they're releasing it now for October. That way, everybody that wants to go and watch horror movies for the spooky season will go and watch it. And it's a Terrifier movie, so hopefully that will help it for, you know, its name will drive people to the cinema, because like in the UK, we never got a chance to see Terrifier 1 and Terrifier 2 at the cinema until recently, and they got the double bill, which I watched, which is great. But when it had its original run, the UK didn't get it as a cinema release, and now we're getting Terrifier 3. Obviously, it's an occasion. It's something to go and behold, you know. But it has come out too early, but at the same time, I think the reason they've done it so early is because it means, and I could be wrong, but I don't think I am, although I could be. I think it's because they might try and rush a home release. I don't know if that's going to be physical release, but it means it will go on streaming services for Christmas. Obviously, I'm not saying this is what's going to happen. I don't know that. But I think that I think the way that they release this now at the cinema, it gives them enough time to rush a release to go for streaming and go on streaming platforms for Christmas, which means people are going to be wanting to watch this movie at Christmas time because it's a Christmas horror. So it's a very smart business decision if they do that, but it also sucks because it would be cool to see a Christmas horror at the cinemas at Christmas. So it's a bit of a con, but at the same time, it's a smart decision business-wise, which actually might mean that we get to see Terrifier 3 at home sooner than later. So I can't necessarily complain too much about that because I want to see Terrifier 3 as soon as I can again. So where do we go from here? We know that Terrifier 4 is happening. We know that the end of this movie ended the way that it did. It's not necessarily a massive cliffhanger, but we know that there's more to tell of this story. I think the ending actually probably could have been a little bit better. They could have ended, you know, the last moments of the movie could have been at the tiniest little bit more exciting. I'm not talking about the big fight or anything. I'm just talking literally the last 30 seconds of the movie could have been maybe a little bit more exciting to send us out of the cinemas going, fuck, I can't wait for what comes next, although I'm like that anyway. But I think they maybe could have done a little bit more. But where do we go? Yeah, Terrifier 4. It's making me more excited. It's making me more optimistic because I was very worried about going into this movie because Terrifier 1, people know how I feel about that one. Terrifier 2 absolutely blew my mind and I did not expect it. And I truly fell in love with every aspect of Terrifier 2, of the characters, of Art the Clown, of Damien Leone as a filmmaker and how inspirational he is to filmmakers out there for what he's done with the budget, with the practical effects. He's such a true inspirational, a filmmaking inspiration. And I honestly don't mean that lightly. I truly am inspired by him. I think he's fantastic. And it's great to see hopefully the potential trajectory for not just Terrifier, but for him as a filmmaker. And hopefully exclusively to horror. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But it makes me more optimistic and excited for Terrifier 4. Where more than likely, that is going to be the end to it all. That will probably be the last of Art the Clown. And I sort of hope for that in a way because, like I've already mentioned, I don't want Terrifier to become what it could so easily be. And that is Art the Clown just going around for a whole movie, an hour and a half of just doing nasty things to people with, you know, where the only substance is blood. And what the substance that it needs is character development and great looks of the movie and gnarly kills, but so that for a reason and a reason why they're there. Simple as that. So where do we go? As I said, Terrifier 4 we know that is next. I'm very excited about it. But with Terrifier 3, I'm still buzzing from it. It was what I wanted it to be, and I'm very, very happy and very grateful that it was what I wanted it to be. And I think it is one of those movies that over time, when I get to watch it again, I feel like I might enjoy it even more the next time I watch it. And that's exciting. And what a great time we are with horror, where we've got a new icon of horror played so well and performed so well, that does the most gnarliest, messed up things that, you know what, we're okay with because it's Art the Clown doing Art the Clown things. So there we go. That is my review, my very long, very honest, in-depth review of Terrifier 3. For any of you that obviously have stuck around that are watching this, obviously, you know, it means the world to me. When I do these reviews, like I said at the start, they're not the same as everybody else's. I want to be very honest with you, and outside of doing, you know, a full podcast episode about it, you know, this is a pretty big movie and a pretty long one. And at some point, Terrifier movies is something I will cover on the podcast. But for now, you know, this is it. This was a very in-depth review for Terrifier 3. If you've seen it, I hope you enjoyed it as well. If you haven't seen it and you're watching this, then you're mad. But if you haven't seen it yet and you're watching this, irrelevant of what I'm saying, just make sure you go and see it. Go to the cinema to see this. If you have seen it before and you're watching this, well, go and watch it again if you can. Give it its money because it deserves it. And like I said, let's get some hashtags or whatever fucking petitions going for Lauren Rivera to get the awards, because she deserves it. So there we go. So look, that's my review. I hope you all enjoyed Terrifier 3. Let me know in the comments what you thought of it. I'd like to know your opinions of it. But until next time, until I get another review, and I mean, hopefully the movie that I get to watch next and review will be like this, but I'm, you know, not holding out for it because this was a special one. But until next time, stay creepy.